Welcome to REELVERSE Reviews, in what will hopefully be a series of videos showcasing iconic films of the past. It's only fitting that episode 1 of this series will be one of the most polarizing films that has ever existed. And it just so happens to be episode 1 in its own right. And of course I'm talking about Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And if all goes according to plan, this video will be releasing on the 25th anniversary of that film's release. So the question is, do you feel as old as I do with that information at your disposal?
I'm too old for this shit.
I am your host, Joe from ReelShift, and as always, with me is my co-host, my multiverse counterpart, Cancel Joe. Figures you would pick one of the most racist movies of all time for our first episode. Have you no shame? I can see this is going to be a long video. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
Hey, wait! You almost got us killed. What are you, brainless? I can speak. The ability to speak does not make you intelligent. Now get out of here. No, I think I'll stay. My name is Cancel Joe. Stay down. Oh, thank God, you saved me again. Let's get out of here before more droids show up. I think the safest place for us right now would be my universe. Can you take us there? Oh yes, they'll just love you there. Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace follows Jedi Knight Qui-Gon Jinn and his apprentice Obi-Wan Kenobi, who are assigned to resolve a conflict when the Trade Federation cuts off all routes to the planet Naboo. Along the way, they meet a young Anakin Skywalker, who will later father Luke Skywalker and become the ruthless and powerful Darth Vader. Geez, spoiler alert! I realize that this movie has been looked at as being very divisive in the past for many reasons. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it is not without its flaws. That being said, I have very fond memories of watching this film growing up. It was obviously the first new Star Wars film that I had seen in theaters at the time. The hype for this movie was at an all-time high upon its release, and in a lot of ways, I think that made it very difficult for George Lucas to ever be able to live up to that hype. Here you go already making excuses. Why can't you admit that this movie is terrible? Well, considering we've gotten much worse Star Wars movies in recent years, it does kind of put things into perspective. I think one of the things that throws people off most about this movie is just how political it is. With a lot of talk early on about trade routes, taxation, blockades, and so forth. I can see why some people would be taken back by that when you first watch this movie. But the truth is that this political backdrop was 100% necessary to tell the story that George Lucas wanted to tell. And this movie's story essentially equates to one giant power play by Senator Palpatine. He manipulates the Senate, he manipulates the Jedi, he manipulates the Trade Federation. Also, he can eventually seize power and become the Emperor that we know and love from the original trilogy. When are we going to talk about how the creatures who represent the Trade Federation are racist Asian stereotypes? Automatic cancellation. Yes, and I suppose Jar Jar is a racist stereotype as well. You should know by now, man baby, that everything is racist from a certain point of view. Okay, let's move on. The other thing that I really like about Episode 1 is this is the first time we get to see Jedi doing Jedi shit in a fully realized way. And they waste no time showing us exactly what they are capable of with the perfectly casted Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor. I remember it being somewhat jarring the first time I watched this, seeing Obi-Wan as an apprentice, after spending most of my life at that point watching him guide Luke Skywalker. But to me, the saving grace and one of the best parts of this film is Qui-Gon Jinn, played by Liam Neeson. I love that they present his character as being simultaneously wise, powerful, and loyal to the Jedi, while also showing that he's a free thinker and has a bit of a rebellious side. It makes him feel very unique amongst the other Jedi. Plus, to me, Liam Neeson elevates what would otherwise be some shoddy dialogue with his performance.
I will find you, and I will kill you.
Wait, you're acknowledging just how awful the dialogue is in this movie? What was all that nonsense that little brat was saying about angels? Hey, he's a person and his name is Anakin. Yippee. Speaking of Anakin, a lot has been said already about Jake Lloyd's portrayal of Anakin Skywalker in this film. And while I will admit that it does leave a lot to be desired in some instances, I will say that I watched the screen tests on the DVD extras of the 3 kids who were in contention for the role. And I have to say, without a shadow of a doubt, Jake Lloyd was the best of the bunch. So there's that.
Here's to you, Dad.
Outside of a somewhat awkward portrayal at times, what I love about Anakin Skywalker as a character in this movie is how they quickly and effectively build the lore around him. Everything from his mother proclaiming that he is Star Wars Jesus with her Immaculate Conception story, all the way to his midichlorian count, and yes, I know, a lot of people have issues with the concept of midichlorians. It never really bothered me personally. I'd much prefer a thought-out scientific reasoning for why some people are more in tune with the Force than doing it like the sequel trilogy did it and insinuating that pretty much anyone can be a Jedi. I'm looking at you, Broom Boy.
Now clean that up. That's right. Get me a white boy. Get me a blonde-haired white boy so I can enjoy that.
I'll have you know that in my universe, there's only 3 Star Wars movies, and they're all directed by Rian Johnson. Wait, so you're telling me that the Rian Johnson trilogy actually exists in your universe? Wow. No wonder you left. I need to send a big shout out to George Lucas for how he produced the pod racing sequence. I think it was a big swing, putting a sequence that big and that long in the middle of a Star Wars movie. But even if it is a little bit long, it definitely comes off like a passion project moment for George Lucas. You can definitely see the work that was put into that scene, especially when it comes to the special effects. This movie might be a little bit too reliant on special effects and green screens, and I would have preferred a bit more practical effects. But a lot of the special effects scenes that are in this movie are the scenes that stand out. And based on how new the technology was at that time, it is impressive in how they use it. Do you ever stay consistent in your arguments? If an MCU movie was 90% green screens, you would lose your mind. So we're just going to ignore the fact that Episode 1 effects are still infinitely better than the floating heads in Love and Thunder.
What the hell am I looking at? When does this happen in the movie?
Can we talk about Darth Maul for just a second? Without a doubt, one of the most iconic things to come out of this film. Everything from the character design to Ray Park's screen presence, it all works. He has just a little bit of dialogue in the movie, but honestly, he didn't need any. You can't help be interested in this character based on his appearance and his aura, and they don't give him a lick of character development through the entire film. Plus, the double-edged lightsaber, I mean, come on. From the first time I saw it to today, it still gives me goosebumps. Aren't you forgetting someone? Why haven't you talked about the racist abomination of a character that is Jar Jar Binks? Well, I mean, he is a little annoying at times, but I always looked at it like he was written to be that way. Let me put it this way. I'd rather watch a Jar Jar Binks origin story film than watch anything produced by Disney Star Wars. George Lucas couldn't hold a candle to what Kathleen Kennedy has done, incel. Anyways, some of the other things that stood out to me about this movie, in particular, was the world building, with the hidden civilizations and the underwater planet core sequence, as well as showing us Tatooine in a way that we really hadn't seen before. There's one thing you cannot deny about George Lucas's Star Wars. That being, it feels fleshed out and it feels alive. And I think that has a lot to do with George's planning. He understands this world better than anyone, obviously. And even if the execution isn't always there and things do come off a bit cheesy and hokey at times, in the end, it still feels like Star Wars. Star Wars from a different time, but Star Wars nonetheless. Surprise, surprise, another dig at modern Star Wars. Why don't you just cut out all the BS and tell everyone that you hate women? Well, I do think that Padme in this film is a pretty underwhelming character. Too soon?
Wait a minute. Hang on a second.
The ending of this film, without a doubt, is my favorite part. First off, we have Qui-Gon Jinn being somewhat defiant towards the Jedi Council and a very awkward-looking puppet version of Yoda. After that, he and Obi-Wan are tasked with escorting the Queen back to Naboo. And this leads to, quite simply, one of the greatest Star Wars sequences ever put on film. Of course, I'm talking about the 2-on-1 lightsaber duel between Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Darth Maul. George Lucas has said that he wanted the lightsaber duels to be more fast-paced and athletic in these films, because these Jedi and Sith are in their prime in this film. They aren't old men and first-timers like in the original trilogy. That decision was brilliant in my opinion, and it led to one of the absolute best, if not the best, lightsaber duel ever put on film, and it still holds up to this day. And John Williams was an absolute madman for giving us the Duel of the Fates to bring it all home. The whole fight is brilliantly put together, everything from the choreography to the setting. It all feels very epic, as Star Wars should. I particularly like the moment where the shields kind of slow the whole fight down, and it really does build anticipation for what will happen next, especially after Darth Maul kills Qui-Gon. Are you done with all the George Lucas glazing at this point? There's a reason that Disney owns this property now. It's because George Lucas got so discouraged by fan backlash because of these movies that he sold the whole franchise. Listen, Episode 1 might not be for everyone, but at least Star Wars was still thriving as a brand after this movie was released. Can't say the same thing about Disney Star Wars now, can we?
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
This movie concludes with Yoda and Mace Windu talking about the Sith and building intrigue for the sequel, and Obi-Wan taking Anakin as his apprentice against the wishes of the Council. Words can't express how hype I was at the time seeing this. Even though I kind of knew where it was going, I was still interested to see how we get there. Bottom line, I know that Episode 1 has its flaws in its acting, in its writing, and its overall execution. But in general, I do feel like it's an underappreciated and overhated film. In a lot of ways, it's everything that I love about Star Wars and more. And I make no apologies when I say that I had a great time watching it once again this week. It's often regarded as one of the worst Star Wars films, but I don't even think it's the worst Star Wars film in this trilogy. It could be my nostalgia talking, but I'm more than willing to give Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, the Cathouse.
Saved by kitty litter.
You want my rating? Absolute, over-the-top, racist trash. The fact that you're sitting here defending it makes you lose all credibility. How anyone could put a movie like this over the peak cinema that we got from J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson, I'll never understand. Maybe I should pick the movie next time. I have a bad feeling about this.
Y'all be cool. Right on.